So what I want to do now is switch over and start talking about emails. And I want to talk first a little bit about some do's and don'ts. And if you look on page 139, there was a woman that did a lot of the Howard Dean emails who had a really cool name. Her name was Zephyr Teachout. And Zephyr wrote some of her best practices on that page of kind of things to do and things to don't do when you're writing a good email. Things like draft drunk, edit sober. Very, very good advice. Make sure to edit, though. But what I want to do, I've got a few that I kind of use that are, some of them are kind of taken from there, some of them are, say the same thing in slightly different words. So I want to talk about 5 do's and 5 don'ts for writing and sending email. All right? So the first one on the do's, things to do. And this one I've already mentioned. 1 ask and 1 link per email. All right? You don't want to send out an email that asks people to give money and asks people to contribute and asks people to volunteer and asks people to show up to some event. Because in all likelihood, they're not going to do any of those things. You also don't want to send out an email that says, maybe has a fundraising ask, but then has 2 or 3 other links to other things, like maybe a YouTube video or a blog post or something. Because what's going to happen is they're going to click on one of those other links, go to some other page, and never go back and do the thing you actually asked them to do, which was to contribute money to the campaign. So every email you send out, there is one purpose for it. 1 ask, 1 action you're asking them to take, and 1 link. That link might be repeated several times, but you are only going to be doing 1 link per email. So no matter what link they click on, it's going to take them to the page to do the thing that you're asking them to do in that email. All right? Does that make sense? 1 link, 1 ask per email. That's why I really don't like newsletters. A lot of times people will send out newsletters that's the whole purpose of it. It's just a lot of information, a lot of different links. You can do that as long as it's not the only thing you do. I see so many groups that all day they send out a once-a-week newsletter. That's all it is. There's never any action that you're asking people to take. There's lots and lots of different links. And eventually, those, some people really like them, some people read them, but not very many. And you're going to have a very, very low open rate, low participation rate in those emails, if that's all you do. Now, if you're going to do a newsletter once every other week or something, and in between you're asking people to do other online actions, then okay. But don't have the same thing going on over and over and over again. And that's true for whatever your ask is. Don't only ask people to give money to your campaign. If all you do is send out a fundraising email once a week, people are going to get tired of it. So you got to vary things up. But every email just has one single ask, one single thing that you're trying to inspire people and motivate them to take action. And again, that can be donating, signing a petition, voting in a poll, writing a letter to the editor, a number of different things. Right? But only 1 thing per email. All right, so the second thing on the do's is you want to personalize it. Personalize. So you want to make it seem like a real email that you might send to another real person. So a couple of things with this. 1, every time a campaign sends out an email, it should come from an actual person on the campaign, either the candidate themselves or the campaign manager or the field director or someone who's an actual living, breathing person. It's always weird when I go to these trainings and meet people. They're like, oh, I get your emails. Wow, it's great to meet you. It's like, yeah, I exist. I'm a real person. And everyone at DFA, anytime you get an email from DFA, it's either from me or from Charles Chamberlain, our political director, from Jim Dean, somebody, there's an actual person that email is from. And we usually, our emails are all very different. We have different styles and kind of different personalities that we try to develop depending on who the author is. So you want to personalize it by having it come from someone, and not just from the campaign, but actually from an actual person on the campaign, whether the candidate or someone else. But also when you're writing an email, and this is very important, when you're writing an email, you want to write the email as if you're writing it to a single person, and not as if you're writing it to a big group of people, right? Because although in your mind you know that you're about to write a letter or send out a message to hundreds or thousands of people, all these people are going to be receiving it individually. And they're going to be reading it as if it was personally addressed to them. And you want to, for your writing style, use words like you instead of all of you. So that it seems like something directed specifically at them, asking them to take action, and not something where they're just one out of so many other hundreds of people. All right, so make it a personal note. The more, I always try to ask myself after writing an email, like, would I send this out to someone I actually know? Or would that seem like really weird? If I sent this email to someone I actually know, would they be like, what the heck? So try to make it as personal as possible when you're writing these. All right, so third I want to talk a bit about a subject line. So subject line is a critical part of an email because that essentially is going to determine how many people are going to read the email, right? So a good subject line should be short and curious. Short and curious subject line. So what do I mean by that? So one, it needs to be short because you don't want to have you only have so many kind of inches. You think about the way we see emails. Usually you only have so many kind of inches where you can actually read the subject line. Now that said, there's always the exception that proves the rule, right? Sometimes if everybody's doing a short little catchy subject line email, you do a long one and it's going to stand out and more people might open it. But generally speaking, shorter the better. And the big part, though, is to make it curious. Make it seem to the person who reads the subject line should be like, huh, what's that about? That should be the reaction you want out of people, because that's going to be the reaction that's going to make them want to click and read the email. So, for example, if say you wanted to send an email about an event that you want people to go to next Saturday, you could title the email, "Come to our event next Saturday." Okay, great. That gets to the point, but it's not curious. It doesn't kind of people are like, oh, there's an event next Saturday. If I'm interested, I'll click. If not, I won't. A better subject line for that would be, what are you doing next Saturday? Question. Because then they see that and they're like, huh, what am I doing Saturday? And I'm not really sure. Why are they asking? What's going on? I'm going to click on this email and open it and find out. Right? One of my favorite subject lines that I wrote for an email was last fall, we're doing one of our online trainings in September about just canvassing and phone banking skills. And we had some guest trainers on for this online training to talk about when you're out going door to door, when you're on the phone, you're working on whatever campaign, what are some best practices and tips you can use. And the email went out that week that the campaign seemed to delve into madness, where there was a whole lipstick on a pig nonsense theme going around, and just everyone's like, what the heck are we talking about? So the title of the email that I put out was just the word focus. It was just the name, the subject line. And I thought it was pretty good. It was short. People wanted to see focus on what. It does spark that curiosity. But the theme of it is we need to stop paying attention to all this stupid distractions and focus on the skills that are going to help us win the election. It's basically the theme of the email. But I didn't even realize until I saw it later how awesome it looked, because I'm looking at my inbox when it landed, and it's full of spam and other big long crazy things. And then there's this little teeny little email right in the middle that says focus, and you just kind of focus right on there. Had a very, very great open rate. So a short and curious subject line. Bigger, fancier email programs, if you have a list of people that's really, really large, or an organization that sends out emails to lots and lots of people, can do tests for these. There are certain services, and actually on page 140, there's a number of different kind of technology options for sending emails, just depending on how big of a list you're dealing with. Some of the bigger ones, which are very expensive, but they allow you to do a lot of really important things if you have a big list, will allow you to test subject lines. So Move On, for example, always tests their subject lines. They'll pick 4 or 5 subject lines and send it out to small groups of people, and then look and see what percentage of people open each subject line. And then they'll find out which one had the best response, and that's the subject line they'll use to send it out to everyone else. So you can test these things if you have the program and the software that allows you to do it. If you're just using a Google Groups or something like that, that's a very free or cheap and expensive thing, you usually don't have the capacity to do that. But these things on 140, these are some of the more kind of well-known platforms that are out there. But there are tons and tons of these now, and more springing up all the time. So I encourage you, instead of just looking at the ones on this, kind of really do some searching around and find an email platform that's going to work best for your needs, just depending on the size of the list that you have.